Hi, good morning, Nico. I'm happy that you said yes to our little interview here, and maybe you can start with giving a little intro who you are and what you guys are doing.
Sure, happy to. And thanks for having me. Excited to chat. So I'm Niko. I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO of Rerun. And so Rerun is building we see as the kind of the missing data stack for physical AI. We have an open source project for kind of logging and visualizing and querying multimodal data that's quite widely adopted at this point, heavily in robotics and spatial computing, but really quite broadly anywhere where we have multimodal data that changes over time. Um, so that yeah, it's used in some open source project by Apple and Google, Meta, companies like that, onto your two-person just started sort of announced that they're in YC kind of company. And so that's our open source project, and that's really sort of where we started as a company. And now we're building out what we see as the rest of the data stack. And it's an analytical data stack. You can just think of it as basically the large scale cloud data tooling that you need to effectively work with this kind of robotic style data and sort of like the whole journey from collection to training, and sort of everything that you need to do there in between. So it's query, sort of database query engine, storage and indexing, a layer, data catalog. So we kind of found that to really get the experience that we need, um, you need to sort of rebuild a lot of these pieces in addition to the visualization. So yeah, really sort of brief on what we're doing. Maybe just one or two words on why. So we we basically see that most of the world's GDP is in the physical world, um, and software for the last whatever 20 years or so has mostly been um, sort of affecting that part of the economy through administering work. So that's like keeping track of accounting and managing what has been done and so on, but hasn't really at scale been able to do much of the work. And that was what we see now with sort of AI becoming working more and being sort of possible to apply to the physical world at larger scale for more and more problems, really opening up that I think, yeah, really like the largest change to our economy in a very long time is coming right now. And the teams that are building this, they basically don't have the right data tools, so they iterate and kind of work much slower than they should. And they're sort of all feeling the same pain, and we're here to try and help.
Good that you're mentioning the pain already, right? It's not technology, and now we're looking for something what we could do with it versus we're building this because there's an actually need for that. But we'll come later to that.
Sure.
Thanks for giving us some insights up front. I think that gives a little bit more context here. I'm I'm always interested, and I said this before to you that I would like to decipher and yeah, getting an understanding where you're coming from and how do you become a person that builds these kind of things, right? And maybe
Yeah.
you can take us along.
Sure. So I guess you asked me to I can start from as early as possible.
Yeah, please.
So I'm from Sweden. My dad's American though, so I kind of grew up in a little two feet in both worlds. So I grew up in Stockholm, kind of always interested in like how things worked, so technology and so on, but also business and like how things work from a kind of maybe systems perspective, or like how do things happen in the world. And so I'd say my early educational career was me trying to jump back and forth between those. I just didn't start coding as early as most people in maybe our team now. I started a little bit I started in high school. But I was really into sort of math and physics and that kind of stuff. And sort of I was trying to figure out what to do. So I studied a lot of that in high school, but then I ended up taking a little bit of time after high school trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and then ended up choosing to go with business, starting to study like business. So I moved to London and did that for a year and like really didn't like it. Like I'm really interested in how starting companies or sort of companies and how all that stuff works, but I just didn't enjoy studying it, I think. And I learned through doing that um, that this was enough for me to have like a side interest maybe, and that I really should do the real serious study should be sort of engineering. So I moved back to Sweden and started the engineering school, and there I did sort of electrical engineering and engineering physics. Yeah,
Short interruption. So you're finishing high school, and then you said you didn't jump right into university. You said you would like
yeah,
to test a little bit. Most people go traveling overseas
yeah.
in Asia, Australia, whatever. And you said you went to the UK, to London, and start a business. If can because it's very vague, and I have a
Yeah,
lot of ideas what that could be,
sure.
and maybe you can.
So
Uh,
I studied. I took a year off and worked and traveled. So did some Euro rail kind of stuff. I spent a bunch of time in the Alps skiing. So that used to be like a really big. I still love skiing, but I was quite serious about it for a while. Later in university, I was like the president of the skiing club and organizing ski trips down to the Alps for all the students and
nice.
stuff like that. So I've been quite involved in that kind of thing. But yeah, I guess I have yeah, I really like off-piste skiing, so I spent some time doing that. I don't think that there's, at least at the time, there was a common thing to do here in Sweden to take a gap year.
Hmm.
And I don't think it actually helped me much in terms of figuring out my career. It was fun to ski and so on, but I was told that it'd be good to do that, to think about what to do. But I think I learned at least that it was better for me to try something that was wrong, than and then learn from that rather than sort of think about it. Well, that's my experience.
So taking action versus overthinking things.
Yeah, I think thinking is great. I mean, I do that anyway, so I don't think I need to. It's hard. I can't stop myself. So it's just sort of more information to try something that's wrong rather than um, thinking forever about something.
Hmm. And then you said, okay, you were mentioning a job in the UK before you went back to Sweden.
No, I studied. It was, I don't know, business undergraduate degree.
Oh,
So that was it's the school is now called Base School of Business or something like that. It's in the city. It's all right school. But I don't think I think I was a bit naive before then. It's like, oh,
hmm.
business is everything. It has, like, you need to understand like technology, you need to understand economics and psychology and sort of so many things. So I kind of naively just thought, well, I'm just gonna take all those areas and really studying them very deeply, and that's not at all. That wasn't my experience doing them. Was like
Mm.
brushing over everything very shallowly, and London at the time, finance was the big thing, and I really wasn't into finance. So it was a little like sense that everybody just wanted to go work in the city and finance, and I was sort of a odd bird out.
When
But
was
London
that?
was a great city. When was this? 2008, something like that. So it was like,
Seriously,
yeah, it
dude,
was right in the crisis.
it's
So like right after,
you look so young. I think you're 25, but you're not.
I don't know, I'm 37 in a couple of weeks, and I've been around a little bit longer. Yeah,
Crazy. Congrats. You look very young.
yeah.
Nice. Okay. So then you said, okay, this is not for me. I can see why people are here. People are interested in finance. This is where everything is happening. I mean, the crisis is obviously a different topic here, but then you decided you would like to do something and going back to the things that you're mostly interested in. And so how was it? Was it hard to make the decision, or was it easy for you? Because sometimes people go somewhere and they say, I don't want to look like I quit because I can't do it, or I don't want to do it, and maybe people have expectations. How was that
Mm.
for you?
I think it was clear to me I was in the wrong place pretty early. So I kind of dealt with I didn't want to quit mid-year, so I finished the year. So maybe, yeah, I dealt with that psychology that way instead, sort of finishing one thing at least. It was
Hmm.
pretty clear to me. So it's more figuring out what I wanted to do. And at the time, I mean, basically, machine learning wasn't that big. So, well, I was really into physics. Um, so I almost did theoretical physics. But then I was kind of seeing the only interesting things you could do with theoretical physics at the time, I thought, if I didn't want to do like be a researcher, which I didn't think I did, was to go into finance, and then sort of why leave even. So then I ended up doing more engineering physics instead, for that reason, really, that I wanted to kind of do real things in the real world and not do finance. I think had I known about like how interesting machine learning would have been, I may have just done like pure physics and gotten into that faster. But because I mean, a lot of great ML researchers have that background, but I didn't know at the time. So that I took that path, and so I moved back to Sweden. Great engineering, for lots of great engineering schools in Sweden. So I moved to one in Linköping. I just basically didn't want to move back to Stockholm. Otherwise, I probably would have done KTH. And I had a great time there. It was pretty like very student focused, and yeah, I was able to be very involved in different like student organizations and sort of organize a lot of things, and to kind of keep that part of me alive while also sort of living in math and building things and so on.
And during the time, because you said earlier on that you've been interested in physics and math anyways, um, a lot of people struggling with these kind of things when it comes to, um, I mean, there's either those that where those kind of things were always very easy for them and come very natural to them, and
Hmm.
other things, and sometimes I heard people saying that I wanted to do things, and in order to do things, I need to do the basics, and I wasn't a very good student. I wasn't very interested and very focused on math and physics when I was in high school. So, but here I'm facing something in university, and some basics are missing. So I do need to
Yeah.
go through the hard stuff to be able to do the things I would like to do afterwards. So I do need to challenge myself, or I need to bring myself to really build upon that. And was that something that was easier for you because you did all those things earlier on already, or was that something that you experienced as well?
I think schools and that kind of stuff always came fairly easy to me, and particularly math and those kinds of things. So obviously there's work, right? You need to still study and do work, but yeah, I found that those parts came pretty naturally. Um, yeah, so I think I well actually yeah, I mentioned I didn't start to code like super seriously when I was really young. So I think it was rather like maybe a little bit later in my university tenure where I kind of really understood that I wouldn't be able to do all the interesting work that I wanted to do if I wasn't also a great engineer, like the programmer. Um, so that was kind of maybe my struggle to sort of realize that towards the end and say, oh shit, and I kind of have to like keep all the theoretical stuff on, keep learning and becoming better, but really focus a couple of years on becoming like a good developer. So I think that I had that realization towards the end there, and that became maybe yeah that's where I really put a couple of years like really focused on that.
I'm always trying to drive some learnings, and I mean later on I will ask you what would you tell yourself, a younger version of yourself, but
Mm.
people who are listening to this podcast and are maybe earlier on in their journey. Is there something? I mean, it's pretty obvious that as you said, you do need to work hard to get those things and then being able to do something. But is there anything that 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 you think this is something that wasn't too obvious for me? That was something that I needed to understand on and feel and experience myself.
Yeah, I mean there are a lot of things. It's hard to go back and so on, but I think yeah, one is it was like a more meta point. It was a cultural thing in Sweden. It wasn't clear to me that you could do like be an engineer and or sort of be a builder and do that and do the build kind of the most incredible things, or sort of really work on sort of the pieces of technology that changes the world, or build companies that way. There's the culture at the time was, I think, a bit more that it was like business people and kind of maybe banking or whatever, those like classic sectors, so that, and politicians, and so that those clear leaders like that changed things or that affected how things were, and that maybe there's like huge companies that get built somewhere else, but there wasn't a lot of that around. So I guess I didn't have a sense that it's actually possible to sort of do the NBA or of tech, like that's a thing, that you can, that there's like a, sure there are the big, Volvo or whatever, Ericsson kind of engineering jobs, but there's also kind of another tier where you can really like build things with a small team, push really hard, to be at the frontier, and you can just do it yourself without climbing some ladder for 20 years, which I think I didn't have the patience for, or maybe not, I think patience, and so I never really wanted to do that. And I think had I understood that you can kind of, there's this sense that like you can do anything, that maybe took me a little longer to realize really that was possible in tech. So I think that would have changed a lot for me, but the more practically I start, because of that, because that thing exists, and you actually should be able to, if you want to, and you want to be part of that, the practical skills of being able to build things yourself is kind of the central thing. Like if you really want to do that, then you need to know all the theoretical stuff and being able to do research if that's what you want, but you should be able to build it and do it yourself. So if that's consumer things, you need to understand design. If it's more machine learning, AI things, maybe you need to make things fast and deploy systems and really do it yourself, not have this big company mentality, which was what I knew about when I was younger. So that if I were to go back and say something myself, it'd be something like that. The kind of NBA level exists for tech, and you can be part of it if you just put your mind to it, and you need to be able to build things yourself to do it, right? So yeah, both practical and theoretical matters, something like that.
I think, I mean, today when you look at this, and especially as more and more people like not doing this or doing this, like the bottom up approach.
Yeah.
I think it's good to hear this, right? It's good to hear this, that you're now here where you wanted to be, but without doing the other way around, and that is maybe there's more learning, there's more agency, more things that
Yeah.
are on your own, and I think this is definitely something that needs to be taught, because it maybe saves a few people from, because it's very exhausting the other way around, right? It's very exhausting, and not of so many independency, and so I think it's great that you're pointing this out. Finishing the degree, and we were mentioned earlier on that through your father, you got a bit of the business sense, because math is math and physics is physics, but business is something totally different. And this is a podcast where I talk to deep tech founders, and very often people are very deeply rooted in academia, and then finding out when entering the entrepreneurial world that there's a huge gap in between how a lab works and how you build and research technology and then building a business out of it. What kind of input did you get from your parents or from your father that
Yeah,
was something that stuck with you through all that time?
yeah, I think I kind of I grew up with business around the dinner table. So my dad ran a business my whole life. I guess he started his company when I was young. I don't know, one or two. And my mom was in banking. So we just kind of grew up talking about the world from that lens, around the dinner table my whole life, like about running businesses, how world events affect businesses. That was kind of always the like present. And yeah, it just come from like my great grandfather started a business that became quite large, and so I just have had that as I don't know what they say, mother's milk. So it's just been around, and I've always thought of the world that way. So that's probably quite different to your classic researcher than discovered it later. So yeah, I've just always had this sort of thinking about that, and then skipping that a few years, getting really deep into something like machine learning or something, and then going but always sort of thinking about like businesses. Should I start something?
So finishing university, was that you already put your mind into it? Maybe you can bring us back in time that when you finished university, what was the next step for you guys or for you?
Yeah, so my university degree had a like exchange program with Stanford. So I did it was sort of a competition or something like that to get the spot, and so I did the first year of my master. Like in Europe, you come to do like a combined bachelor master for engineering, or at least in Sweden that was common at the time. And so I did the first part of my master's at Stanford, and there I really got bit by rather like the startup bug. This is like startups rather than just a business kind of. So I was part of like early days of a company there that was doing like emotion recognition on Google Glass.
Wait, when was
Um,
that?
what it was just when it was 2013, feels about right. 14, somewhere around there.
Time goes by fast.
Yeah, something like that. So it was I mean, this was right. So I was there and taking classes with Andring and Fei Li and this like now. Well, they were already giants at the time, I guess, or sort of famous at the time, but now they're maybe more so. And yeah, deep learning was kind of just starting to hit. I think I can't remember if AlexNet came out like right before I came there or while I was there, but it was still sort of the thing that they didn't really teach in the classes. It was more like the researchers were sort of like talking about it on the side. So I think those early things were more classic methods, but they were doing some support vector machine for motion from facial expressions and stuff like that. Um, so that was pretty cool and really fun. I think also just being part of that, like trying to start something. And as I mentioned before, like that's really at Stanford's really where realized the importance of becoming like also being a great developer. So that kicked me off on that journey to. I wouldn't say I ever became like a great developer, at least not comparing to my current colleagues, but I became a lot better than I was before. Um, yeah, so that kind of started there, and I went back to Sweden and wanted to stay in Sweden, more for personal reasons. I met my now wife, who's she does Swedish law, so it's not very easy to move to the US. Um, so I wanted to move back, and then I joined a startup right after university. I kind of just wanted to. I didn't feel ready to start a company for that reason. I guess I didn't have I wanted to have been like deeply working as an engineer quite deeply and have that foundation before becoming sort of less technical. I feel happy about that now, but
Did you do this like very consciously, very like on purpose? So, or is that
join a
something that
company or which part?
no, the part that you said no, I don't want to build a company myself. I would like to work as an engineer and
Yeah, I think yeah, this it comes back to that. I hadn't been like building product myself, in the spare time. There's some of these like great founders of our time, and I had, already built a huge amount of stuff themselves technically um, before high school or something, or during high school, and I wasn't like that, and maybe that was my sort of insecurity or something that I felt that I really wanted to have that grounding of having built multiple like production systems and really like having that in my gut how that feels and like understanding that deeply and having that as a base before I became kind of non-technical or sort of semi-technical.
Mhm.
So that was a very conscious decision. I wanted to work in startups, so I very clearly like didn't want to go do like a big company job. But yeah, that was pretty conscious. I feel happy about it now, but I wouldn't have been gotten to where I wouldn't have been doing rerun if it wasn't for those early stints. But I don't know that I would give that like recommendation to someone else that maybe mid-bid or just go directly at the thing you want to do. But I was very happy about that. I did want to build, be a researcher and developer, and I really enjoyed that as well.
I think the the advantage that you have is you're not an entire first-time founder because you're kind of know how it is being involved in something that is as chaotic and crazy as a startup versus going into, let's say, Volvo or Ericsson that have been around for a while and have very clear structure, and you have a very clear job description, and these are the little parts of the bigger thing that you've been handed on because everything is very specialized, and you please solve that versus this is the startup thing where you do everything and anything. And
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that you already had this kind of sense to understand uh, which step to take first. I don't know if this is because you have been surrounded by business and understood, okay, there might be, or maybe of the learning, as you said, you have been programming a bit, but then going to the US and see, okay, I need to step up my game to be able to compete, or at least to do the things you would like to do. Thanks for taking us here with you. And so you joined a startup, and what happened next?
So yeah, I just like came in there as one of the first like engineering hires. I did my master's thesis there.
Where?
This is Volumental, it's
Hmm.
called. So did 3D scanning of feet to recommend shoes, basically sort of physical retail. So when I came there, it was a bit more broad. It was really was a bit more like technology and search for a business. I learned about that route as well.
Hmm.
Maybe to not do that. Um, and yeah, but it's a great company. They're quite successful. Really took that market way ahead of any competitor many years. So I learned a really lot about building like a intelligent product for the physical world. There was no infrastructure for doing things like there is now, and so we just did everything ourselves from the ground up. So I really learned a huge amount from that. But yeah, I joined there, and they were still sort of searching for a business, trying a bunch of different things, and as foot scanning was one of them. So it kind of came out a project out of KTH. So another robotics lab where they had someone wanted to gather more robotics data. Um, so they and the Kinect camera had kind of come out fairly recently. So they or it had been out a couple of years, but it became more popular in research. So they did this project where they called, I think, Connect at Home or something like that, where you
Mhm.
could like take a Kinect camera, connect it to your computer, and sort of point it around the room or something, and upload it, and they'd reconstruct it in the cloud. And they did this just to like trick people, I guess, into creating like an open source robotics data set, like to run simulations inside of like more realistic homes and things like that. Uh, but then that got really hyped and so on, and they ended up raising some money to build a company around it, and they were searching for actual business to do that. So I kind of showed up in that time frame and put my thesis on pause to help build one of the products there. And one of the things that they started looking into was the foot scanning application. There was like face scanning and like a bunch of other things that they tried. And a couple of those became businesses, and then at some point they cut everything else and became focused on feet. So I was really the main developer on that. That kind of went from it being the first kind of shitty prototype to being the whole business. So yeah, from really just scrappy prototyping with like laptops and just handheld cameras and stuff, to us building out those whole systems for learning and reconstruction and productionizing that, building hardware, multiple iterations of hardware, working with designers and then manufacturing and quality control is a huge thing. Is building like I think there were a couple of years where most of the focus was just like quality checking in the factory. Like that actually was making sure that the end hardware was working correctly when it showed up with a customer was sort of a
How was
1 year
it?
project something. Yeah.
How was it to then being in the physical world with hardware? as you've been coding in the years before and everything is on your laptop, you can do everything from anywhere. And then facing, and also the iterations, right? You get feedback very easily, or you can debug something, and then being now in the physical world where things are a bit slower, where things are a bit more had more dependencies. How is that for you?
Well, I mean, I think I was always drawn to the physical world.
Mm.
Um, so it's kind of always, I just was really interested in this connection between physical and digital. Like, yeah, it's always what I was drawn to. It was like a bad career move, really, right? Like the physical world, things didn't work that well. Those things were slower. Would have been smarter just be like, oh, I'm into computer vision, so let me do that for ads and social networks or something.
Hmm.
That would have been a much better career move. But I don't know, I've been obsessed with it from like the math, so like 80 sort of conversion, you know, and all that like that stuff down to computer vision for that purpose. I just really was into it. One of the things that got me into computer vision originally was like the thing we're doing now. Like, I guess we have, if you're listening, you don't hear that, but I don't see this, but yeah, we can't look each other in the eye. And I had like a long distance relationship with my now wife actually. It's a little different. She was living in a different student town. And yeah, you can't look each other in the eyes. And if I just had like, you have to be able to solve this with vision. So that's kind of, and then I was spending nights in the library, like, what is this computer vision? Like just finding books. There's like a camera on the thing and it said computational geometry, something. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. This seems right. So that's like how I got into it.
Crazy.
So I was always drawn to the physical world. So, and I hadn't really done a lot of non-physical computer vision. And I was really into computer vision and machine learning. So I don't know that it was like, I learned about the physical world versus something else, but I learned a really lot about building like working products for the physical world during that time. And I think I carry that helps me so much now to empathize with our customers and users, and just having struggled with that stuff for so long, I think it hopefully gives me better product sense now and so on. But I don't know. It's just it's not rational. I've just been drawn to it.
Just yesterday, I had a conversation with someone where I also ask, is the are you looking during the building from a perspective of you using this, or maybe someone else gonna use this, right? It's a physical world, and yeah, the person was surprised that even though thinking about it, it's obvious if you're building something, you're building this not necessarily for yourself, right? Or your peers. It most necessarily you and your peers need to understand how this runs and how this works. But for the person using the things that you're building, it's not necessarily important how that works, just that it works, right? And and here being in the physical world maybe can help to have this different kind of perspective, because as I'm not as technical as this guy, this is my world and my view on the things where I don't understand the technical parts of it, but I understand that I do need to use that part, right? And yeah, it's funny that you say that out of own interest, you might be a better product developer because you have this outside perspective, yeah, within, right?
Hmm.
And an interesting take.
Yeah, I think yeah, you have to have a mix of that, like seeing the world from someone else's perspective. But it is easier when you have experienced a lot of similar things as that other person. Um, I think even if shouldn't be fully, it's great to be able to just be your own the user, but even just having a conversation with someone, and I think you can, like, if you know more about what it is to have their job, their day to day, how how emotionally how it feels to build a product like that, then you can ask better questions and pick up more from less. And I think being able to do more with less is maybe the key. So I think that's yeah, it's super important from that reason perspective too.
Leaving that behind, or maybe you can tell us how one led to another to yeah bring you to where you are today.
Sure. So yeah, actually the two other co-founders of a Rerun were colleagues from Monumental, so very much related to what we're doing now. But what basically happened is, so our now CTO Emil came to that company from like a game, he had like a gaming background. He joined as a general algorithm developer, we called it, but didn't have a background in computer vision or anything like that. So he started just approaching problems by building like visualization tools. Um, because that's, I mean, you've been building a lot of internal tools at game studios that have been working at, and just had this like fully different tooling mindset than us. Like you would build super interactive, great, like really deep visualization tooling to like understand the what's going wrong really deeply and sort of viscerally. And then when you see it, you can usually just write an algorithm that fixes the problem quite easily.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was a time when most problems you'd solve maybe with like optimization or like classic approaches, not so much ML. So that was extra effective, just looking at things and writing solutions then. Uh, so that I saw that, and he was working on a different team, but I was like, this is the way to work. And then I think Emil and I started sort of collaborating on what the tooling should look like and so on. I guess I ended up being this kind of, I don't know, asking for stuff and he built it kind of relationship. And so we ended up building really great internal like data tools there at that company, which are very visualization focused, but yeah, there was a database. That was a graph database there to keep track of everything, but was like great data tooling in general. And it started out as like little debug tool for the ML engineers or the vision engineers, and it kind of became, oh, let's also use this for data annotation when we started to do more machine learning. And we used it to as our like observability tooling for deployed machines. So I think we had like scanners in 50 countries in retail and with like one support FTE, something like that, because it was just so effective to just open a record. Like someone reported something and you could directly like connect it to a recording of what had happened and like debug it very quickly. And usually that could fix everything. So like a lot of things didn't have to go to engineering. And when I went to engineering, it was like the most perfect, bug report because you could just look at the data. Um, so that was really effective. And then
But
it ended up getting used in sales conversations and product, internal. It just became the central tool that we built the product with for the company.
But
Um,
to go here into for a second, that seems like the ideal world, when I've been working for a few companies, and whenever the talk is about expansion and then the US market, Asia, it's always I mean with software it's different than with hardware, but here the combination of both, and then say, you know what, I have just one person, even though we have 50 systems, that sounds like a dream for a robotic company being able
yeah,
to sell some things, and so, whatever happens, no problem, we have somebody who fixes it right away, we know exactly what's wrong. It seems a bit too and do you think this is based on the 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 way the tool was built in the first place, so keeping that in mind, that this is important, or was that just an outcome of it, just a consequence?
I mean the data tooling and so on.
Yeah.
I think that grew quite organically. Um, but I think it was just we built it ourselves then, and we had some like really great tools developers. Uh, Emil being the main one, and then another one of the co-founders is really great at that too. And then um, yeah, I think we were selling into retail. This is a very difficult cost. Like retail is not going well in a physical retail, so and we really had to become like very, very good at making things like incredibly easy to operate and simple, right? So it was almost like an Apple like unboxing experience. Like
Mm.
it would just show up with a couple boxes in everything pre-installed. They just open the box and plug it in, and it would just work directly. I mean, that was that getting started and robustness experience was like most of the work for probably like 2 years of like really nailing that well, like everything from quality at the factory, making sure everything is showing up working and that it's like super robust when it lands. So that was just also like making that robust was just so much of the product effort. And that allows it to scale. So it wasn't 50 systems, it was like hundreds of systems in whatever, almost 50 countries, I think. So it was, and I think still to this day, it's one of the bigger deployments in computer vision, at least in retail in the world. At its time was definitely the biggest in retail. Oh, whoops. So I did.
Um, the 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 focus on that specifically.
Yeah.
Uh,
Once again, I need to put my charger and I realize. Yeah, go ahead.
uh, like putting the focus on that and that focus on that specifically, and as you said, for almost 2 years. Again, was that why? I mean, not too many companies that I know would really focusing on that because there's a technology, there's the problem needs to be solved. But no, you know what? The problem needs to be solved, obviously, but the product itself is not only there to solve the problem, it's also there to be used very easily, almost intuitively, and it needs to be very, very robust because this is the work you put in now frees you in the future, right? There's no maintenance, there's not too much service, there's not too much I'm sending it back because it doesn't work kind of thing, right? There's so many good out, but still a lot of companies are wasting your time, wasting their own time and their own resources and focusing on other things. And there's so many fires that needs to be handled. Who came up with the idea that this is so essential for the product?
I don't know that anyone came up with that, to be honest. We were all, it was an interesting, very different experience than now, but I think we were all like kind of fresh out of school, some out of like finishing their PhDs and some, earlier than that. So we just did what we thought made sense. But I think we just had to, like that was the nature of the customers were super non-technical. And it wasn't a moving robot, right? It was just a fixed thing. So remotely, we can't do that much. And we started off like we can't move it around, like we can't tell off the thing and solve the problem that way. We kind of had to make users do the right thing. So that included like the customer setting it up right. If we weren't there, sure, we'd fly in for the beginning and help out. And everything was like we were scrappy in the beginning. We built things that weren't robust, but we were really focused on just making things better and really focused on evaluation on the accuracy side of things. And that's his whole own thing. I could write a book on evaluating these kind of systems, I think. But yeah, I don't know. It just came out of like working with customers and trying to make a good product. And that's it for like when you had one system out there that was fine, then we had three, then already like you had lots of problems. It was hard to manage just calibrations or whatever. And then I think just solving problems for years that ended up focusing on this. So you have to have a holistic approach, right? Just think about your whole product. And that really speaks to me personally. I love like this is the most fun I could possibly have, being able to think like really, really holistically about products like that in a way that requires you to deeply understand like the machine learning involved or kind of all the algorithms and what are the actual sources of problems and what's the accuracy in this different context and failure modes to what the users understand. What do they do? What are they going to do wrong? How do they read the situation, which is often very different than what's happening, and how does that fit into business needs? It's like the holistic thinking. I just love it. It's the best thing in the world. So I don't know. Maybe we just did it. I don't think there was any strategic thinking around that. We just try to solve problems.
Yeah, I mean, it is unique. I mean, is when you're walking through, this is where I'm always struggling with understanding the other side is you're a consumer yourself, right? We use this on a daily basis. If there's an app
Yeah,
on it that doesn't work, it gets deleted right away, right?
yeah,
If it's not working, if there's two times, I think this is shit. Or if the website is like, where's the button? Click, I close it anyways, right? And And so for me, I think I feel very much the same, that it's hard to not understand that this needs to be used by someone, right? And maybe this is because people are so good and so focused on the technical things and the difficulties that needs to be solved there, that you do need to have this kind of brain to focus on those things to solve them, that you cannot have the capacity to think about the other things, that some people who are not in the technology as deep as you are needs to use it and needs to buy it. How did you guys, being in that company, meeting each other, developing things, led to the things that you guys are doing today?
Yeah, so after a couple of years, I left there to join another startup. So it's a point of sales app kind of thing using computer vision in Kenya. So I moved to Kenya and worked on that. And that ended up for whatever reason, or a bunch of reasons, not working out. So I moved back and
And how
tried
long
to
have you
start
been
it.
there?
I was in Kenya for a year, roughly. Worked on, well, I worked on another, there's a long story. I worked on some other stuff in between because things got complicated. But then I came back and consulted a bit and tried to figure out what to do, and started a company doing like remote collaboration. This was mid-COVID, like full COVID. It's like remote collaboration based on like augmented reality. Had a big vision for that. And then the starting point where we tried to start out was like you could use your camera pointed at a flat surface and draw on it and use like any physical surface as a whiteboard for remote collaboration. Long story, that didn't end up working out. I think after like now it seems like a bad idea. I thought it was an awesome idea at the time, but I learned really a lot. So that was my first company. So I think we did that for a year or so. We had okay starting usage and so on, but it never really took like proper lifted, and it was like a prosumer kind of product. And I think maybe I have a little bit more of a B2B brain. Um, but or at least I don't think I'm as this right now. I'm not like a great consumer founder. But either way, I think where we ended up in this place where we saw that we needed to improve the user experience of this product to make it like really robust and useful enough. And to do that, we would have like had to have a lot better tooling actually. Really like the kind of introspection or observability tooling kind of sets the upper bar for how good you can make your product. I mean observability or whatever in the broadest possible sense. Like if you're building models, that's your evaluation as well, and sort of whatever that is, like your debugging setup and data tooling. And we kind of hit the upper bar, like we can't make the product better without making better tooling. And then there was nothing good out there that we could use. So we would have had to raise like a lot of money and build, a 5-person tooling team to even make this feasible. And so that was not even close. We haven't proved the business out at all at that scale, like to warrant that investment. And so I mean, maybe we could have done a better job at proving out the business earlier. A lot of things we could have improved, but anyway, that's where that kind of killed that company. And I've just been obsessed about this tooling for years and just had in the back of my mind, like that's only the real thing that I really know too much about. And like that's the thing I could start a company about, but there's no market. That's always been my like who's gonna like, it's so small, like it's so specialized, the physical world, AI kind of stuff. So that's always been in the back of my mind, but I just had the growing sense that maybe it's becoming better timing and it's growing. And that last experience with that company really like got me back and to be super obsessed by this problem again. And yeah, particularly build some tools for myself there that like had something click in my mind. Oh, like it can be made like a lot more general than I had thought prior. And so yeah, I just was obsessed about it and started talking to Emil again and to Moritz. So Moritz he was the CEO of Alimento and was thinking about or had basically was leaving there. So wanted to do something new. And Emil was at a gaming studio again. And he started eGUI, which is one of the biggest, or now it's the biggest GUI framework in Rust. It's open source. Inspired by Dear InGUI, if you know that's like immediate mode C++ GUI library that we'd used a lot for building internal tools prior. So he was the best developer I'd ever worked with by margin, and so good at this kind of tooling. And so we just started talking again and about this, and I think all of us couldn't really let it go. So that's kind of how we got started on it. And then we decided to like do a focused experiment. Let's spend like 3 months, build a little proof of concept, but in particular focus a lot on the market to try and figure out, like convince ourselves that now was actually good timing and that the market was actually about to be there.
Convincing
But
yourselves, or trying to dig into and trying to find customers?
well, it's sort of the same thing. I mean, we had an
Because
idea that we spent 3 months, and after that 3 months is over, we should be so convinced that we should be willing to work for no salary for another year. Like that was the kind of bar that we set. And how to get that was talking to lots of potential customers. I mean, that's the best signal, right? Um, so we
okay,
just,
I misunderstood
yeah,
you. I think this was the part because like we do need to convince ourselves, and then I was thinking, who do you need to convince? You need to ask people, and then
yeah.
understood. But yeah, okay, now you're this is what you're
That was, I
saying.
mean, we already knew that it was important for ourselves. Like, so we just wanted to, I had just gone through a lot of pain of starting a company that was like not exactly solving a huge burning need. It was just something I thought was needed to exist.
Hmm.
Maybe there was something there, but like I really didn't want to do that again. I wanted it to do something where you explain it to the right person, they just like pull it out of your hands because they can't wait. Um, and the problem that I understood the problem first. Like I never wanted to do like some solution that I liked first, right? I wanted to do a problem that I felt. And this is a problem that I had felt so deeply. But then it was, so we already had that. But I really wanted to convince ourselves that, yeah, that it was like we thought, it was broader than, and like more broadly applicable, and that the timing was good. So yeah, we talked to a really lot of developers building this kind of stuff, like a lot. And like got the like a mix of it was some of those companies basically asked us to stop what we were doing and or like just were like, hey, here's like they're willing to give us a lot of money for what we thought was a lot of money at the time, at least for what we were building. Just like, yeah, stop talking, like let me pay you, can I do it right now, kind of thing. And we like got started like, oh, like okay, we need to figure out contracts and stuff. So that was a really strong signal. And then we also found like there are lot of people who clearly had all the problems that we were talking about, but hadn't thought of this as a potential solution. Um, so that was also actually a good sign for us that they had the underlying real problem, but not they didn't conceive of the solution. But when we saw that they would be, so that was like a little bit of like one of the reasons that there is no good solution out there is that it's sort of hard to connect the dots. And then we spent time sort of more like analyze like classic market analysis, I guess, and just found that there was a lot more use of machine learning or AI from the physical world than what's broadly talked about. Was
Mm.
in lots and lots of like industrial companies, and like it was a lot broader than people thought. And then sort of technically we knew that it was coming. So we had a view that no one else, everybody else sort of thought like that this was on the way down, but we thought it was the opposite and it was actually happening in broadly. So broadly market, we had found that like a really burning desire for some early customers and that there was like validating that sense. So that was we spent the first couple months on. And so convinced ourselves that we'd be willing to spend, a year without salary or something working on it. But then with that conviction, then we raised money instead, because why wouldn't we do this with a bigger team and like really go for it? So that's kind of how we got started.
And when was that? Like this
2022. So it was in the spring. So we raised money when like the world was collapsing during like the financial markets and fundraising was collapsing during COVID. So that was kind of intense, but it worked well. So
I mean, this has been now, you've been a few years in, and you said that, I mean, this product market fit, because this is what it's essentially, right? Uh, you're talking to people and they understand directly what you have, and you don't need to convince them, you don't need to seduce them, you don't need to explain to them. They understand, they have the pain, and they want to give you like, shut up and take my money, right? This is product market fit. And how is the journey since then?
Well, yeah, it's a long journey because I think we ended up still like not taking that money. So they wanted to pay us for things that we thought should be open source.
Mm.
And so we actually spent a lot of time upfront thinking that through, like what to open source and what not. And so we decided that actually it should be open source. And we spent time talking to people building lots of different companies and like data tooling and a lot of things like that, and investors and stuff, like really trying to think through what to open source, and kind of got into, we think that this is going to be a very big market, but that it's going to be very, like the application areas will be very broad. Like you get agriculture, medicine, manufacturing, there's like so many different application areas. Because of that, it's very hard to do top-down sales, and like open source is the right way to get to developers. And a lot of this tooling is so, like visualization tooling in particular, is so important to your company that it's like kind of it's stupid like you really shouldn't depend on closed source visualization for a bunch of reasons, but you have to embed it in like all your, like to do it right, you want to embed it in all your internal tools. You want to use it for everything. So you kind of don't want the visualization to be, that's like not the thing that you should monetize. It should be just like water. You want to be able to visualize everything. Little script, like debugging script, like visualization. You want to have it in your training. You want to have it for debugging your data pipelines, your central dashboards for understanding your system. It needs to be everywhere. And that just makes it very hard to monetize, because it's so important. It's hard to monetize directly, and to grow, like to get growth, it kind of should be open source. So we kind of got to that insight. So then we didn't charge from them, because it would set us up in a weird situation to charge for things that were going to be free. So we then basically raised money, spent like 2 years just building out that open source project, that just focus on this like logging and visualization. And I think there's still like, we could just work on that for 10 years. It's like a forever deep project. But so that the journey was, I think we learned a lot during those 2 years. How to build it, of course, like huge amount there, how general it was. So we'd like right early on, it got used like for physics simulation. A lot of it, we just advertise it as like debugging, like visual debugging for computer vision, like try to keep it down, and then people will just pick it up and use it for more stuff. I mean, there are like quant trading firms that use our things, because it's like really fast for like streaming visualizations, time series and things. So it's very, very broadly used, and it got picked up by some big companies. I think one of the biggest open source projects that got included in is pretty early was like Meta's project Aria.
Mm-hmm.
But then yeah, so just kind of working with users and then talking to them, that got me at least to a lot of insights. And I think it would have made much worse like product decisions about the platform that we're building up now, or the rest of the data systems, without that time, and whether like spending all that time with talking to a lot of our users. So yeah, that's a big journey as well. But the first 2 years was just basically that.
Spending the time on those things, I think, no matter what kind of product you have, no matter what kind of service you build, I think this is so essential. It's hard because you are thinking about, I need that time to build the product, but you just said it very clearly. You might have even gone the wrong direction, right, or built the wrong things, and here being very clear, very close to the pulse of the people that are usually using the tools. Those are the ones who tell you. I mean, if it's sometimes, if you're not experienced enough, then it's sometimes hard, depends on what kind of product you have or service you have, to get the right things, because there is I would like to have these kind of features, or they would be nice, or they stop dreaming, and then there's your feature, but yeah, staying close to paying customers and staying close to those who are really invested and committed. I think that is very crucial, and especially as you said, such a long period of time. How many people were you during that time?
We grew slowly the headcount there from, I think we hired 4 people like kind of off out of the gate, and then we were around like 7 to 9 for a long. We just added one bit slowly. So for the first 2 years, I think we were maybe 11 or so at the end of that time. So I guess last summer, and then that's kind of when we started to working on the commercial product and kind of build out more than our 21 today, 22, depending on how you count. We'll probably be 35-ish by the end of the year. So growing headcount quite a bit now, at least relatively speaking. Yeah, but I actually don't know where I was going now, but that was something like that.
Interesting that you really were focusing on keeping the team small and lean. I think it's always a good decision because you never know how things are happening, and then you're stuck with a big headcount, which you don't want to. So as we're coming towards the end of the podcast, where are you guys now at the moment, and where you want to go?
Yeah. So the open source project, I mean, as I said, there's like so much more to build, and we're like building really intensely on it still, and we'll continue to. But it's used now quite broadly, and I think it's become the favorite among researchers and so on in this field, or these fields, I guess. So basically intelligence for the physical world. And we're really now building out the data platform, I'd say, so that, and there are many ways of like a data platform is a broad thing. As I mentioned before, like our original thinking of us bit more like observability platform.
Mm-hmm.
But what we really learned is from having this open source project out there and being able to talk about like the VP AI at some big humanoid companies and things like that, that the kind of, you don't want to have one observability platform and then another platform for your training data and your training data pipelines and so on. You train on the same data that you use for observability in the space, and that really changes things. So you, because it's all the same kind of style data, and you get a huge amount of the friction, like the core product development loop when building these products is like you record data, like physical or simulated or mixed or whatever, and then you kind of analyze that data, like look for maybe issues or problems, and then you fix them, right? You improve. And usually the main like crank that you're pulling as you improve is you're curating and improving your training data sets, maybe evaluation data sets and so on. Sometimes you change your model parameters or your algorithms. You certainly do a lot of that, but the main thing that you like crank the most often is just improving data sets. That's like this, and there's like a lot of friction in doing this right now. So like having great tooling can be the difference between you collecting new data and running a new experiment and multiple times per day versus like once per week or something. It's a huge difference in product velocity. So that's kind of what we're building towards. And we just, because we found that it needs to be, you want to use the same data platform for your analytics, your observability, your training data pipelines, you actually need to take a very general approach. So you could think of what we're building as kind of a data lakehouse for physical AI, if you know what that is. But just the ability to have sort of unified data interfaces and sort of metadata handling, from raw logs to intermediate process tables to kind of training format, like optimized for training format, or writing your analytics on top. So we're working on that right now. So I've hired a bunch of like distributed systems and database engineers, and are working with a couple smaller design partners, and they're in the process of adding some bigger design partners right now. So they're paid design partners. It's not, I guess, customers is the right word, but and yeah, so we're really growing the team, building out that product. I think it has I mean, it's an important foundational piece that needs to exist for this sort of industry to positively change the world as we hope it will. And so hopefully be releasing more things in public towards the end of the year, but working with some great companies in between.
And do you think the decision when you started talking about the platform and the differences, why not only that, and why not only that, and maybe a combination of that is because here again, you guys are your own users as well, so you have an understanding because you've been going through the pain, and so you're kind of being in the seat where you're serving yourself.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, at this stage, though, it's like it's been a couple of years now since I built a company like this myself, and like was a researcher myself. So, but what I think, but that helps a really lot. And we've hired people who have worked on a bunch of robotics companies and build this kind of tools on big and small companies before. But I'd rather I think it helps us learn faster, like learn the right things from customers. And probably one thing is like I'm an ex-researcher. So maybe I have that bias of like we really think about that person. So it's a bit selfish maybe, but I think about like that person as being the central person for building these kind of new AI first products, which is a bit different than sort of classic. Like if you're building a different company, maybe you're like coming from the infra side or coming from the business side or something, that you maybe have a more observability first mindset because at scale, at your previous experience, that was the biggest problem you had. And I certainly, I mean, I've seen that problem really important, but I think we early on had this idea that what's changing is machine learning is changing everything, and that's going to bring in a new kind of person, like a new kind of researcher into robotics and other like physical world fields that has completely different expectations on workflows and tools because they come from, they're used to like Hugging
Mm.
Face and weights and biases and tools like that. They're really easy to use and install and so on, like very different than your experience of using ROS or like working with hardware. And that these people would merge with the kind of classic robotics engineer into like this new kind of profile, and they want to work in different ways, and that the AI first companies are going to build their companies around making these researchers super effective. So that mindset, I think, comes from the experience of building these things ourselves, and like really thinking about that user, like researcher and engineer kind of user as the primary person that we're building the product for, and everybody else is supporting them to make a great product, and we're also trying to support them.
I think here, adding on that is the new tools that are available enable you to do other things faster or better, and then combining things. Let's say you are a mechanical engineer and you would like to do something in computer science now with the democratization of computer science through those AI tools. You have now expanded your portfolio, your portfolio of things you could do because the bridge between your expertise and the skill is not as big anymore. You can now apply your skills in a different way to different things through those tools. So I think you're absolutely right that there will be a new wave of new things that are coming towards us, right?
Yeah, I mean, and there's clearly that huge thing, but I think robotics and open source robotics had a huge like wave and arrival on its own, I think. So combining that with making it easier to build things with LLMs and stuff, has, I think, is a double whammy. So really really sort of great tailwinds for this industry.
I'm curious to see where things are leading towards too. You were talking about open source robotics. I mean, the thing that caught my eye was also when I was doing a thread the other day about the phosphor guys
Hmm.
and what they are doing and what they're needing, and you're being in that tool stack. Thanks for being so open and taking such a long time actually to go through all that, because I think I mean right now there's a little bit of a hype about European companies and European builders.
Yeah,
So I think it's great to see that there's some deeply rooted. I mean, different reasons. You haven't mentioned I mean, you said one of the reasons were personal, coming back to Sweden, and I think we're all very happy that you did, and it seems to be working out pretty well. So all the best to you guys, and keeping an
thank
eye
you.
on you.
Awesome. It's great to chat, and thanks for having me.
Giving you a last opportunity, is there anything else we should look out for this year that comes from you guys?
Yeah, I think on the open source side, so we've been that I'm really excited for the community to check out as we start releasing it. So we're pushing hard into making Rerun easier to use for roboticists, basically. So we'll be releasing MCAP integrations, like integrations with ROS systems and similar, to make it really easy to do there. And we're also going to be pushing heavily on some of the data, like open sourcing actually some of the more data and query capabilities, such that we want to make it really easy for sort of open source users who are like maybe working on the robot style projects and to really use Rerun to also like to record data to either if it's from a ROS style like message passing architecture, or you're just recording with Rerun directly, live visualize, and then write queries that transforms that data into like red data formats that are ready to train on directly with Rerun. So this like whole from recording to kind of training data in this like very easy to use open source sort of integrated thing. So we're going to be releasing a bunch of stuff in that area that I think the community will hopefully love. So yeah, for anybody in that space, look out for that. And if you have specific asks there, then come find us on Discord or GitHub and tell us what you're looking for.
Great approach, and seeing that you're playing the community game pretty well, I think is exciting. Exciting is especially as you see what comes out of it. I mean, the Le Robot hackathon was just last weekend, and I
Yeah,
think this is one of the biggest open source robotic topics, and I think it was quite successful. And you can see really how people love it and how it accelerates and enables people. So great to see that.
yeah. I mean, I think that's an incredible project. I'm so impressed with what they've done with the community, and we're obviously honored that the Rerun is the main visualizer in that project. And yeah, we're going to spend a bunch of time in making sure that Rerun is more useful for people working on that.
That is a word. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And yeah, looking forward to see what's coming.
Awesome. Good chatting.
Take care. Bye
Yeah.
bye.
Bye.